Greetings, everyone, and welcome to our wonderful webinar, Cash for College. This is part of our college webinar series that GCS and CFNC and Say Yes Guilford and also Carolina Advising Courts have joined forces to present to you guys over the course of the year. We started this about a year and a half ago due to COVID-19. We had to change up our programming from in-person to webinar series, and I think it's been very beneficial to you guys. You will be able to utilize this video for future reference. It will be on the Say Yes Guilford website. My name is Clinton Wilson. I serve as a supervisor of high school counseling, and we are so happy that you are here and learning about our wonderful program tonight. I'm going to pass it over to our partners.
All right. So before we get started, I'm going to run down a couple of things for webinar etiquette. Number one, you've all been let into the meeting, but please keep yourself muted as you're entering. Number two, if you have any questions, please throw them in the chat. We have somebody who's here who can answer your questions. And if not, go ahead and save it till the end for the Q&A session we have. And lastly, if you fail to abide by these expectations, you will be removed from the webinar. We don't want to do it, but if we have to, we will. So my name is Frank Adams, and I am one of the presenters for today. And our other presenter for today is Ms. Tequila Hall, the Guilford County rep for CFNC. And just to re-mention some of our other partners, College Foundation of North Carolina, Guilford County Schools, Guilford Parent Academy, Say Yes Guilford, and Carolina College Advising Corps. Without the whole team, we wouldn't be able to do this. All right, so just briefly going over what we'll talk about. We'll talk about the different types of financial aid. We'll get into grants and scholarships, talk about a couple of the local scholarship opportunities. We'll touch on FAFSA, give you a couple of resources, and let y'all know about some of our other upcoming events. So to start, what is financial aid? To put it simply, this is just money to help cover college costs, and there's a variety of different ways you can get it. They can come in the form of a grant, a scholarship, a loan, or work study. And these are just different things that help make college affordable to you if you don't have the money. And looking at this diagram, this just goes into the different types again: scholarship, grants, work study, and student loans. With the accumulation of all the dollars you get with this, you should be able to graduate in 4 years and be successful with a degree. All right, so getting into it. Grants simply is just free money that you get. Typically, you can find this during your FAFSA. The federal Pell Grant is need-based, and I think the amount that you get per year can vary. And I think this year, the maximum amount you can get through the Pell Grant is about $6,500. So make sure you fill out that FAFSA. Another type of grant you can get is a state grant, and this is just exclusive to the state of North Carolina. So you've got your NC Education Lottery, your Community College Grant, and your UNC Need-Based Grant. And in order to get this, you need to make sure that you do your RDS, your residency determination, to be considered a North Carolina resident and able to get these specific funds. And there are other types of need-based grants available as well, but they vary depending on the different institutions, and some can be used to attend to private institutions. Now we get into scholarships. So there are two major categories you can break scholarships into: renewable and non-renewable. And it's just as simple as it sounds. With renewable scholarships, these can accumulate and keep paying you throughout your time in school, or a non-renewable can be a one-time offer or a two-time offer, just depending on the type of scholarship it is. So when you get into scholarships, there are federal and state scholarships available. These can range, but you have to find them. You also have your national scholarships. Some of the big name ones that I can think of is the Gates Millennium, the Coca-Cola, the Jack Kent Coke. Those are just to name a few. These will typically be a larger applicant pool because it's national, but if you are competitive, you do have a good chance of getting it. So just make sure that you stay on top of those dates and deadlines for those. Another type of scholarship you can get is an institutional scholarship. And this just varies from school to school. So if you're interested in UNC Chapel Hill, they have the Moorhead Cane coming up. If you're interested in NC State, you have your Parks Scholarship. And if you are interested in UNC Charlotte, you have the Levine Scholarship. These are just to name a few, but each institution typically has some sort of scholarship that they can offer. Lastly, I would say local scholarships is a great place to look. So for example, say Yes Guilford has their scholarship. They pay the last penny, depending on like the need-based aspect of it. So you need to make sure that you fill that out. And they're going to preach this throughout the time that we have these webinars. You also have the Community Foundation of Greater Greensboro. And there are plenty of other scholarships out there in your local community. You just have to find them. So go ask your local church. Go look into some of the alumni chapters for some of the Greek lettered organizations in the community. Look into the Rotary clubs that they have. They're just different scholarships that are out there. You just have to find them. And the thing about scholarships is you don't have to pay these back. This is free money. Search these scholarships up every year. You can get scholarships all the way up through your education, past your bachelor's degree even. So make sure you look for that money. All right, next we're gonna talk about work study, which essentially is an opportunity that allows students to work to pay for their tuition and other college-related expenses. This can take a variety of different forms just depending on what school it is, but typically you can see it as certain students working in the library, working in campus rec, like the recreation center, or, you know, doing research sometimes. So it just depends on the scope of it, but apply for work study when you do your FAFSA. And worst case scenario, if you decide you don't want to do work study, you can always decide to not accept it. But in order to do it, you have to do it through your FAFSA. And I'll hand it over to Tequila.
Thanks, Frank. Great job. So I want to talk to you about the ins and outs about loans. So first of all, I want you to know that we want to look for all the aid that Frank talked about. So the scholarships, the grants, we want to consider work study, and let loans be the last thing that you consider. So in other words, the last resort. So remember that whatever amount that you do borrow, you're responsible for repaying it no matter what. Doesn't matter if you're satisfied with your education or not. Doesn't matter if your student graduates or not. Doesn't matter if they ever work in the field that they are going to major in. It doesn't matter. They have to repay those loans. So just remember, when you receive your financial offer or award notification, borrow only what you need. So if you're eligible for a certain amount and you don't need all of that, just borrow what you need to. So you also see information about various types of loans. So the William D. Ford Direct Loan Program, within that program, there are subsidized and unsubsidized loans. And I know those are kind of big words, so let me kind of break it down for you. So when we're talking about subsidized loans, those are loans in which the federal government pays the interest as long as the student's in school and during their grace period. So that's just one type of loan you might see on your financial offer. And then we have unsubsidized loans. So unfortunately, the federal government does not pay the interest on those types of loans. So you can choose to make interest payments as is accumulating, or you can capitalize on the interest. Basically, all the interest you're not paying for all 2 years or 4 years are going to be added on to your principal loan amount once you go into repayment. Now, those loans are not based upon credit worthiness. Those are loans that your student takes out for their own education. So if your parents that joined us tonight, that is not your loan, that is your student's loan, and they're responsible for repaying it under the terms of the agreement. And they have 10 years to repay, no prepayment penalties. Then parents, we haven't forgotten about you, because there is a loan that you as a parent can take out for a dependent student. And we call that the PLUS loan, parent loan for undergraduate student. So as a parent, you can borrow up to the full cost of education, less any aid that your student's receiving. Now, your loan is based upon credit worthiness. So there is a credit check that's done for you, the parent. Now, I will tell you that as a parent, just like for the student, you're not co-signing with your student. The student's also not co-signing with you. So this is your loan. Your student is not responsible for repaying your loan. So as a parent, you too have 10 years to repay, no prepayment penalties. Now, there are also some private loans, or you might hear the term alternative loan, that's out there. And these are non-federal loans that are provided for a for-profit or by a nonprofit lender. So they allow you to borrow above and beyond what your student or you might be eligible for in federal dollars. So again, borrow responsibly. All right, so let's also talk about some additional ways to cover costs. So when we talk about additional ways to cover costs, there are also 529 plans. Of course, you do see NC 529, and this allows you to save for all different types of qualified educational expenses. So we're talking about tuition, fees, room and board, books, supplies, other equipment. So some of you may have already saved. If you haven't saved money into a 529 plan, there's still money that's out there, that you can put aside for the future. So it's not too late. You may have aunts and uncles, friends of the family, grandparents who want to put money aside for the future. So anything you can put aside is helpful. So it could be for books, it could be for a computer, a little bit of room and board. So don't discount 529s because your student may be in high school right now. Some of you might have a personal savings account, so you can certainly take advantage of your personal savings. And then don't forget, there are tuition payment plans or college installment plans. You might hear about those, but those are interest free. So you usually have to pay some type of fee to participate. It's relatively low. And I do recommend that if you are participating in a tuition payment plan, to start at the very beginning of the plan. And so it just reduces the amount of loan indebtedness that you have. And then it does still allow you to pay out of current income. So how can I be considered for financial aid to support the cost of college? So I know this is a burning question that you guys have and are thinking as we're going through the presentation today. So let's talk about FAFSA, free application for federal student aid. So what is the FAFSA? Where do I complete it? And so we're going to talk about that just a little bit. But if your student is a senior, so we may have individuals who may be younger than senior year, but if your student is a senior, the FAFSA opened on October 1. So you can start doing this right now. So remember, the FAFSA form is something that you need to complete if your student wants to be considered for federal state grants, federal loans, federal work study. Some schools also have your student to complete the FAFSA to be considered for institutional aid. So again, if your student's a senior right now, we are going to use 2020 tax returns to complete the FAFSA form. So keep that in mind. Now, you do not have to start it and complete it all in one day. You can start, you can stop, you can come back to it. And one of the beautiful things about FAFSA is that if you have questions, there's help. There's a help chat area where you can, put in your information. If you want to call, there's a toll-free number. If you don't understand a particular question, you can click on it and get more clarity about whatever the question is. So there's lots of help for you. Now, the FAFSA form is free. So when I told you what the FAFSA was, one of the things I said was free. So that means that you should not be paying anyone to help you do the form. So don't get scammed. There are a lot of organizations out there, because your student is getting close to college, that want you to pay for not only completing the FAFSA, but also finding financial aid opportunities such as scholarships. So you don't have to pay for those things. A wonderful website and resource for you is studentaid.gov. So not only can you learn about everything we're talking about this evening, but you can go to studentaid.gov and also access the FAFSA application that we're talking about tonight, and also your federal student aid ID, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So remember, studentaid.gov, you can go there for FAFSA, and also to create your student aid ID if you haven't. So FSA ID is Federal Student Aid ID. And I know you're thinking, what is it and why do you need it? So the FSA ID allows you and your student, and I say you and your student because most of your students are not going to be independent. They're probably going to be dependent for financial aid purposes, meaning that your parent information or financial information will be required on the FAFSA. So the student and at least one parent needs to create an FSA ID. Now, if you're a parent and you already have an FSA ID because you had a student who was in college a while back, you don't need a new one. If you're a parent and you already have a child that's in college, you don't need a new FSA ID. But if you are a parent and never created one, create one. And your student who you're here for tonight must also create their own FSA ID. So what do you need it for? To sign the FAFSA. You can also have access to Department of Education systems with that login. So this is something that you're going to need to keep every year. Okay, so It's not a one-time deal. Keep up with it. And so you can go to studentaid.gov. That's a short link, and you can actually get to the FSAID information, or you can see the longer URL for FSAID here. Now, documents needed to apply. So when we're talking about the FAFSA form, there are several pieces of information you need. So of course, you're going to need your social security number. So it's important for you to enter that correctly. So of course, sometimes I know parents don't even know their students' SSN, and that's okay. You know, if you don't know it, don't guess at it, look at it, get the card out, because there's some students who've been actually putting in the wrong social security number for a while now. But it's very important that we enter the correct information. Of course, your parents' social security number is going to be needed if your student is dependent. And we already addressed that your student more than likely is going to be a dependent student. Driver's license number, that's another thing that is going to be needed here. Your alien registration number if you're not a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident. And then again, for the FAFSA form that we're creating or actually completing this year is going to be the 2022 FAFSA. So when we're looking at the FAFSA, when we're going to the FAFSA website, we need to do the one for the 2022 academic year. So 2022, 2023, and we're using 2020 federal tax returns. So I want to make sure I said that in case I missed it. So 2022 FAFSA, that's the one that we're going to need to do. Now, some common FAQs, frequently asked questions that we get is which parent's tax information do I use in the FAFSA? Okay, so when we're thinking about, you know, who the parent is, I just want you to know is that, of course, it could be biological adopted parents who have married to each other, and that's who the student lives with. So we need to figure out who the parents are. It could be biological adopted parents who are not married, but that's who the student lives with. We have single parents or parents who are widowed. Sometimes we have separated or divorced parents, and we need to know who the custodial parent is. So when we talk about that question, I have that in bold for you because that is the most commonly asked question we get. Which parent's tax information do I use in the FAFSA? So we need to know, you know, the custodial parent's information. So that's why that's kind of, you know, bold for you here. What tax year do I use to complete the FAFSA? So we already talked about that. So we're doing a 2022 FAFSA, but we're using 2020 tax information. So it's 2 years prior to enrollment. You know, which school year do I apply for? So we're doing the 2022-2023 academic year. Do I complete the FAFSA every year? That's a great question. We get that quite often. Absolutely. You do it every year. So the first year we're doing it is when your student's a high school senior, and then we're going to complete it each year as we move forward. If your student wants to be considered for federal and state grants, federal loans, federal work study, some schools use that information to award institutional aid. So although we're talking about the FAFSA, it could be that the schools your students are interested in also want your student to actually complete supplemental applications for financial aid. So make sure you're asking that question. Do both parents need to create an FSAID? That's a great question. So no, not necessarily, but you can. When we get to the FAFSA, at least one parent needs to sign with the student if they're dependent. So if you both want to create it, great, but we only need one of you to sign. If I have two children in school, what do I do? Sometimes we have parents who have two kids in college. That happens. So you're the same parent, but each of your students are they're individuals. So you will need to do two FAFSA, but there is a portion of the FAFSA form that will ask your student, do you have a sibling or brother and sister who's going to be in school, so that your same parent information can be transferred, so it saves you some time. How many schools can I select on the FAFSA? You can list up to 10 colleges that you want to receive the information on the FAFSA application. So common errors. So it happens. Sometimes we have some mistakes. So don't try, I say don't make these mistakes, but I'm going to say try not to make mistakes. The first thing we talked about a few moments ago was the wrong social security information, wrong social security number, right? So make sure that you look at your social security card, okay? Because we can't have conflicting information, so we have to resolve that. Completing the wrong year. So remember, we're doing a FAFSA for the 2022-2023 academic year if your student is a senior right now. Using the wrong tax information. So one of the things that we just mentioned, we're going to use 2020 tax information. So make sure you read the questions thoroughly to put the right information. So if you have questions, we're going to talk about some opportunities where you can get some help. If you have, something that's just you're not quite sure about, we want to help you. So we're going to talk about some different events that are going to be going on through the month of October to help you. So one of the events that we're going to have that's going to be helping you with the FAFSA is the FAFSA driving event. So that's going to be Saturday, October 23rd from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. So this is a drive-in event. So it's a little bit different from the events we've had in the past because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So do want to let you know one of the locations that's local for you guys is Bennett College. So of course you can go to the CFNC.org website to learn a little bit more about additional locations that we might have and to also register. So let me just clarify, the FAFSA drive-in is not a presentation. Let me just say that one more time, it's not a presentation. FAFSA drive-in is an opportunity for you to get help completing your FAFSA, but you're gonna be in your car. I just want to make sure I clarify that. So opportunities for FAFSA Assistant, again, you can go to CFNC.org. We have a FAFSA map so you can see what colleges and universities are helping with FAFSA. So your student doesn't have to be planning to go to that college or university to get help for FAFSA. So financial aid offices are willing to help your student in any way that they can to make sure they can get to the college or university of their choice and be able to pay for it. So you can go to our FAFSA map. We have the FAFSA drive-in. There's some FAFSA videos or resources on the CFNC.org website that are there to help and support you. So additional tips, see if the school that your student is considering requires a CSS profile. So of course, hopefully you guys are familiar with the College Board website. You can go there, you can see what schools inside of the state of North Carolina or outside the state of North Carolina required that form. So I just want to let you know, everybody does the FAFSA. It doesn't matter if you're going to school inside or outside of North Carolina. Everybody needs to do it. So I know sometimes people feel like, I don't know if I should do it because I don't know if I want to qualify for anything. You're not going to know if you qualify for anything if you don't complete it. So again, at this time of year, I know students are very focused on going to the admissions page for colleges and universities, but I want them to also go to look at the financial aid office's page, because not only is it going to tell you to complete the FAFSA, it's also going to tell you if they require the CSS profile. So pay attention to deadlines. So when do you have to get it done by, whether it's the FAFSA application or the profile? Do they have another supplemental application that you need to do? When do you need to get that in by? Okay. So, and also they may also tell you about other awards that are available for their school. So school-specific scholarships, like my colleague Frank talked about. Are there other scholarship websites that they recommend or suggest that you look at? So lots of information that's there. Now, sometimes you could be flagged for verification. So I always tell families, if you're selected for verification, does that mean that you necessarily did something wrong? But what it does mean is that, there's some information that the financial aid office needs from you, and you need to get back with them, whatever question they have or whatever documentation they need, get that back to them so they can continue to process your aid award. So don't worry about it. It happens, where you might be flagged and they just might need to, verify maybe the number of people in your household or number of people in college. It could be something very small. And they could do verification within the school themselves, or they might be using a third-party vendor. So, but the school will let you know. Get that information in as soon as you can. Now, we talked about several different types of awards. We talked about, different types of scholarships. We talked about grants. We talked about loans. And I know you're thinking, I should put this on the other slide, questions that are commonly asked. Well, how do I know when I'm awarded? And that's a great question. So every school is a little bit different. There's some schools who will actually send you a paper award notification. There are other schools who may actually say, well, you know what, we're going to actually have students check their email and see their financial offer. Other schools are more common now are asking you to create a portal to access the financial aid award. So whatever they call their portal, need to go there, and you're going to need to see what types of aid they're offering you to be able to pay for college. Now, again, you can accept or decline anything that you see there. So just want to make sure that you're aware, but let the college know what things that you want to accept. Now, something that makes it really easy for you to import your financial information in the FAFSA is what we call the IRS data retrieval tool. So again, the IRS data retrieval tool. So this is something that Department of Education has made available to allow your financial information, your tax information to be electronically transferred into the FAFSA form. So when you get to the portion of your FAFSA that's talking about this, it's going to ask you a few questions to make sure you can utilize this feature. And then, of course, it's going to let you know that you will have to leave the FAFSA website and go to the IRS website. And when you get to the IRS website, it's going to ask you some information and to make sure they can find you. So you're going to need whatever they're asking you, put your information in just like it is on your tax return. So your name, your address. So just like it is listed on that document. So, and then, once it finds you, it finds your information, it's going to ask you, are you sure that you want your information transferred to the FAFSA? And if you do, you'll verify that or validate that, and then that information will be transferred. So it's the easiest, fastest, most accurate way to get your information in, and it keeps you from making careless mistakes. I've submitted my FAFSA, now what? Okay, so what do I do after, I've completed my FAFSA and submitted it, okay? Some people complete, but they forget to submit. So you complete it and then you submit it. So you want to find out, have you been selected for verification? So if you have, then the next steps is you need to send in or share whatever information is being asked of you so that your financial aid can continue to be processed. So the other thing, don't forget, you need to accept your financial aid award or your financial aid package. So let them know based upon what you see in your portal or on your email or on your award letter, whatever, however you're being notified, what things are you going to accept, or what things are you going to decline. Be sure you've submitted everything they've requested. So also, transcripts, SAT, ACT, all that information. Make sure you're keeping up with your portals, checking that information frequently or on a consistent basis. So just want to make sure and check your email. Check your email. So I hope that your students have a professional email, so that nothing's getting lost in some of the other things that they might be having to come to their email. So if they don't have an email that's dedicated to college, I recommend that they do that. So whether it's something from the admissions office, whether it's something from the financial aid office, whether it's a scholarship, that they've applied for, it's not getting lost in all the other notifications they're getting about things they're interested in. So keep that in mind. Now, scholarship resources, Frank talked about some resources, but I also want to let you know that CFNC has an amazing scholarship search. So if you haven't taken advantage of it, if you haven't started applying for scholarships and you're a senior, now is the time. You don't have to wait until you've been accepted at a college or university before you start applying for aid. So applying for college, applying for scholarships or financial aid opportunities need to happen at the same time. So you don't have to have a CFNC login to take advantage of this feature. It is available on our website. If we have individuals here that are younger than senior year, I will tell you, look for scholarships. Some of them are available for students younger than senior year. Some of them, are just for seniors, but the key thing that you need to remember is that you're finding out the criteria that scholarships are looking for you to meet. Okay, so it's never too early to start looking and planning. Local scholarships out there. Frank did a great job. He talked about Say Yes Guilford. Their application is now open. So make sure you're visiting the Say Yes Guilford website to find out a little bit more about their scholarship platform. And so the checklist that Say Yes has for you guys is really simple. You're going to do your college applications. You must complete your FAFSA, your free application for federal student aid to be considered for the Say Yes scholarship. So make sure you do that. Make sure you're completing your NC residency determination. So Frank also taught about that. So if you haven't done RDS and you're a senior, you can go to cfnc.org to do that, or you can go to ncresidency.org. And of course, that's something that you will need to do, students, with your parents. So I always like to say, your student and the parent equal RDS. There's some questions that are going to be displayed on the RDS interview that you're not going to know the answers to. So do that with your parents. So of course you need to do residency so you can get in-state tuition and also to be considered for state grants. Now the Say Yes registration is due by June 1st of this senior year if you're a senior. So make sure you do it. So you also need to indicate college enrollment by June 1st in the Say Yes portal. So whatever college you're planning to go to, make sure you're doing that, and complete enrollment for college and required paperwork. And then when it's time to begin class, you're going to begin class. So again, to find out a little bit more about Say Yes, visit sayyesguilford.org. Get those applications in, get those FAFSAs done. Now I'm going to turn it back over to my colleague Frank, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about the timeline for financial aid.
All right, thank you, Tequila. So Tequila did a great job of outlining the timeline. It's October 5th, so FAFSA has been open. At this point, if you haven't yet, go ahead, create your FSA ID, and go ahead, complete the FAFSA. It shouldn't take you too long. If you really sit down and you have all the information you need, it shouldn't really take any more than like 30 minutes to an hour. So I say if you got time today after we get off of here, go ahead and do that. So going on, they did say receive student aid and report, and see if you're marked for verification. Don't be scared of the word verification. Tequila just told y'all that y'all just need to provide more information, essentially. So just make sure that you're staying on top of those emails and see if you are marked for verification, what all they want from you. So after you get accepted to certain schools and you sent, your financial aid over there to them by doing your FAFSA, you just got to wait until they give you back your package. And typically, I think that takes about 3 to 5 days for them to process. And after they process that, that's when you can really just sit back and look at what monies they give you. So wherever you decide that you want to go, if they give you the best package, choose what you want to accept and what you don't want to. I think the deadline for that is June 30th. So right around the same time as the Say Yes Guilford stuff, right around the same time that you need to get everything done. So by June, I'd say you should figure out which ones you want to accept and which ones you don't. And if you need to complete any loan counseling, but this is essentially it for what we have to talk about today. As far as upcoming events go, for our GCS College Blast series, that's all for the month of October. But later this month, there will be the NC College Application Week, or otherwise known as Free College Application Week. So October 18th through 22nd, please make sure that you get onto CFNC and take advantage of the opportunity. Additionally, November, we will have another event, the line by line FAFSA walkthrough. So for those of you who need a little bit of extra help with your FAFSA, don't worry, we'll still be working on FAFSA in November. So the registration link for the next events are up here at Say Yes Guilford, or you can go to cfnc.org/events. Just keep up with what's going on, register for our events. Worst case scenario, you can always go back and look at the video, but we'd love it if you could join us. With that being said, are there any other questions? At this time, you can throw them in the chat, or if you're feeling bold, you can unmute yourself and ask. All right, great question. So you don't have to fill out your FAFSA before applying early decision or early action, but you can if you want to. They just won't be able to process it until you've submitted your application and they've accepted you to the school. Okay, what about the SAT and ACT? Okay. Could you be a little bit more descriptive about the SAT and ACT per se?
Frank, I'm not seeing, not sure, let's see.
Oh, optional means they were still looking. Yes, so with the SAT and ACT, but they're being optional this year. Um, Depending on the school, if they're optional, that means that it won't be held against you. So whether or not you add your test scores or if you choose to withhold your test scores, they'll still be weighing you the same as other applicants. Um, Also going back, there was a question about being claimed on the 2020 tax return. Um, yeah, Tequila, you want to take that one? Uh,
Absolutely. So I will tell you, it doesn't matter who claims the student on their tax returns. What we're looking for is who the custodial parent is. So whoever the custodial parent is, that's the parent who needs to put their information on the FAFSA. So it doesn't matter who's claiming the student for tax purposes. We need to know who that custodial parent is, and that parent will need to provide their information on the FAFSA application.
Great question, by the way.
Absolutely. I'm checking the chat too, Frank, to see if we have any other questions. Want to make sure we haven't missed any question.
So what
All
if you're
right.
not claimed?
So what?
Uh,
It doesn't matter who's claiming you when we're talking about the FAFSA form. So we just need to know what parent is providing the greatest support for the student. So the custodial parent needs to put the information on the FAFSA. It has nothing to do with who is claiming you. So I hope that helps. Let's see. What if the parents are divorced but have joint custody? That's a great question. So it can get kind of tricky. So again, if parents are divorced, one of the things I would say um, is that whatever parent is providing the greatest support for you. So I don't know if it's equal. We said joint custody. So let's just talk about if it's 50-50. So I don't really know, based on your question, if it's actually equal when you say joint custody. But if it is 50-50, we go back to the previous 12 months and we want to know who provided the greatest support for you in the previous 12 months. So let's say that was mom. So if mom provided the greatest support for you, then we need mom's information on the FAFSA. Now, if mom is now remarried and there's a step parent in the picture, we must also have the information of the step parent. So, it can get tricky, and if you'll go back to the previous 12 months and it's still 50-50, as far as it was right down the middle as far as the support, then really either parent could do it. But we always go back to try to find out if there was one parent who may have provided just a little bit more, or the student actually spent a little bit more time residing with, one parent or the other to determine if, there was a greater support provided.
okay, I think I see another question. For the ACT and SAT scores, is there a fee to send scores to your school of choice? I don't believe so. Are you talking about previously taken tests? Or are you talking about a test that you're going in to take? Because if you're going in to take the test, you can send your scores the day of. You just fill out on your test who you want to send your test scores to, and they'll automatically send them. As far as sending scores, I think most colleges allow you to self-report your scores for like the SAT and ACT if it's already previously taken tests, especially if you plan to super score your SAT. So I hope that answers that question.
Okay, I'm trying to look through and see if we make sure we haven't missed any questions. I'm going back through. We had a question. I don't know if anybody addressed this. Do you have to fill out the FAFSA before applying for early decision or early action colleges? I do. I have heard that there are some colleges that may, encourage you to do a previous FAFSA just to kind of give you an idea of, how much you could possibly get as far as aid. Um, if you're applying to a college, but that doesn't mean that you don't still have to do the current FAFSA. So if a college has asked you to do that, then you still need to do the current FAFSA that just opened on October 1. So I just want to make sure that's clear. Frank, are you seeing another question? I'm just going back to make sure we haven't missed somebody.
I don't think we missed any old questions. We do have another one. So if the custodial parent is remarried, then that parent and step parent provide their information. Yes. Yes. Ooh.
Oh, I see it. So I see some suggestions. Frank, I don't know if you addressed that one, but how to choose. There was a question about the financial aid package, how to choose the best financial aid package, I think.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, could request. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So that's a great question. We have not scheduled, or I guess you say, our spring sessions. We do always do presentations in the spring. So we will definitely let the committee know that you're interested in learning a little bit more about, what happens when you need to choose your financial aid packages or how to compare financial aid packages. So that's a great one. So Frank and I will definitely bring that up to our group. So definitely that would be something, not this semester, but we won't talk about that until next semester. So that's a great one. Anything else? So if the custodial parent is remarried, then the parent and the step parent provide their information that is correct. So it doesn't matter if you have an agreement to say you pay for your child and that other parent pays for their child, it doesn't matter. The FAFSA wants to know who's in the household, and that step parent would be a part of the household. Frank, you see anything else?
No, I think the parent and step parent question was the last one. Are there any other questions while we're still here?
I'm looking in the chat. I don't see any more questions in the chat. Frank, is there anything that you think that we didn't cover that we should mention before we conclude tonight's presentation? Because we do want to make sure we also provide our contact information. So just in case, people have questions, we want them to know how to get in contact with us. But is there anything else you think we should have said that we didn't maybe say before we get to the next part?
I don't believe. Actually, just to make sure I didn't not say it, you should never have to pay for scholarships. Scholarships are free money. Keep that in mind. So if there's a website telling you that you have to pay for an application fee, that's not a scholarship. Also, be diligent with applying to scholarships. Apply to more scholarships than you do to schools, because you can take all the money from the scholarships, but you can only attend one school. I think that's all I needed to say. That wasn't already said, I think.
All right.
Other than that, please stay connected with us. All our contact information is up here. Got emails and social media pages. If you don't already, follow Say Yes Guilford and follow Tequila on Instagram and Facebook. Another question? No, maybe. But yes, please do stay connected. Reach out to us if you have any questions.
Okay, we do have one final question.
Okay.
We'll take this last question. Does it make a difference for in-state and out-of-state scholarships? So that's okay. So we'll definitely make sure. So what I will say about this is when we're talking about scholarships, sometimes scholarships will specify if it has to be used for, like there's some awards that are just specifically for North Carolina. So if you're awarded that, it can only be used for North Carolina College. Some scholarships do not, specify. You can use it wherever. Some scholarships might even say it's for certain things, like it can be used for, tuition. So you just need to make sure you're looking at the scholarships to see if it's just in state, out of state, it doesn't matter um, for that. So we definitely want to make sure that we're looking at that information. And like Frank said, we need to make sure we know if scholarships are one time or renewable. And parents, don't forget to check with your employers to see if they offer anything. Don't forget about things that you're connected to, different groups, sororities, fraternities, civic groups, financial institutions that might warrant you to get, award your student to get an award. If they have special talents or abilities, if your student knows what they want to major in, are other things that we want to keep in mind when we're looking at scholarships. But that was an amazing question. So thank you so much for bringing that up. So just pay attention. If it's not clear in the information that the scholarship is providing, ask questions so you know whether it can be used for in-state or out-of-state or both. So I hope that helped. All right. Do we see any more questions? So as we mentioned at the very beginning, you can find the recording of this presentation on the Say Yes Guilford website. So if you have any questions about anything, all of our information is here. We thank you guys so much for joining us, and we hope that you have a wonderful evening.